We're all about efficiency here at the Holdback Rec podcast. Daniel Parker's here. Technical difficulties are over. I'm here. I hope everybody enjoys the title I made for this episode. It sounds like a threat or something, but it's not. It was supposed to be a joke, and Daniel's a trooper for putting up with it. So let's do our sponsor.
I just noticed that. That's okay.
I asked my husband, like, mini variants that involved, like, I don't know, smuggling alligators in your pants or whatever. And then I was like, no, we don't actually want it to be Googleable, that it's like, even if as a joke. And I was like, no, but we'll just make it sound a little bit. Sorry.
It's fine. We'll embrace it.
Yeah, okay. VetDNA.com for all of your testing needs. Use code #ShitHappens for $5 off the crypto panel. I know you need the crypto panel. You know you need the crypto panel. And so do all those little hognose snakes that are looking at you right now. VetDNA.com. Check it out. Whew. Sponsors. We have a double header this weekend. We have Charlotte AARPE and Hillsboro Packed Mars. So, like, we have 2 sponsors at one and 2 sponsors at the other one. So it's a lot. So Shane Kelley, Small Town Exotics, will be at Charlotte. He said he's giving out hugs, but maybe not mouth hugs. And I was like, maybe. We'll see. He should have shrapnel, hogs, red line science tool shirts, and hugs there. We'll see what kind. Shane Kelley. And then also there will be Gray Family Snakes. They will have snakes for sale, probably, at Charlotte. I know their paddler's clutch was in the incubator this weekend, so that's pretty good. And check them out. Then on the other back to the west side of the coast, we have Justin and oh God, I can't do this. I'm getting worse at it through time because I'm jumping
You're doing
around.
great.
Thank you so much. Okay, Andrew Powerhouse Python, Hillsboro, this weekend, April 12th and 13th. Go for Cocoa, Frozen Rodents, Ball Pythons, other fun stuff. Justin Brill, I think he'll be table sharing, doing clown pied stuff. That's very good. What's Eileen doing? Bravo Zulu Ball Python. She will be at the Midwest Reptile show in Indianapolis. Not this weekend. It's not a triple header. 2 weekends from now, April 26th and 27th. And then Chris of Reptilia, I don't know what he's doing. What? He's probably breeding different kinds of snakes, and he's looking for new cocoa distributors. Check out cocodude.com to see if you would like to be a cocoa distributor near you, or message him at Chris of Reptilia on Instagram. Hopefully that made any sense at all. Thank you so much. Hi, Daniel. How are you doing? I'm so sorry you were exposed to that.
No problem. I'm happy to be here, and we're having a good time. Is there a technical difficulties thing going on?
Yeah, I would just announced it
okay.
earlier.
These are messages. Okay, yeah, I see.
I'm just putting them up.
Making me nervous here.
Happens all the time, actually. All right, let's get into it. Let's go back in time. Let's get in the time machine. Oh, wait. Before we do that, sorry. I promised Tony I would do this. Tony at Responsible Reptile Keeping asked me to tell everybody to do the survey. Please. I already did it. I did it. It's not that hard. You just tell them what species you keep, approximately how many you have, and like their ages and how long you've been keeping. It's just to see who you are as a keeper. And I was like, okay, Tony, I will announce it. Because they're kind of like out of time, sort of, for when they want to cut off data collection. So if you haven't done it, it's not that hard. Go to responsiblereptilekeeping.org and you can click through and find the survey. Okay, we're back.
I'm going to back that up. That's very important. We dealt with a whitelist proposal, kind of going back into the era that you're going to be talking to me about today. Mm-hmm. And we defeated that. It didn't happen here in Florida. But we found that it's very important for keepers to document what they have all over the world. We need to know what's in captivity, because if at some point they say, well, you can only have what we already have here, and they make a whitelist out of that, like these are species you're allowed to keep, well, you need to be able to prove that you have those. So we really are at a point where we need keepers to keep records and document what they have, keep your receipts, all that kind of stuff, because that's going to be really important going forward with a lot of the legal issues we're dealing with.
So since you brought it up, I almost forgot about the whitelist thing. How did that fall apart or dissolve or lose initiative on their side, where they just decided not to be worried about it anymore? Can you like tell the story a
Well,
little
it
bit?
wasn't that they weren't worried about it, but it was very closely tied politically to the event, which I think is what you were about to bring up, where FWC killed over 30 captive pythons owned by Chris Coffey here in Florida, and also a boa, which was owned by his friend and partner, Bill McAdam, and that boa was pregnant, gravid, and they killed her with all the babies inside, and supposedly because they mistaked it for a python, which they said was illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So that caused a big outcry here in Florida, and that was the same time that they were pushing for these whitelist restrictions, and we were all in what are called technical assistance groups meetings with the state, talking about regulations, and it was very clear that they were trying to jam these through, that they were really, and they knew that this was going to be a huge deal, that this was really going to kill the reptile industry, and not just that, but a lot of the pet industry, including aquaculture and a lot of that stuff. But because they happened on the same timeline, right when they were about to push these through, this big incident became, an international kind of media frenzy. It made it a bad time to try to force something through that would hurt reptile keepers, because it just looked like they were continuing to punish us. And so they stepped back and declined to do it at that time. We had over 100 reptile keepers at an FWC meeting here in Florida, and we fully expected them to pass this whitelist regulatory system, and they didn't do it. They backed off, and so now the tag committee is working on some other things, but luckily right now it's not that.
So they just stopped. It's hard to be like, okay, yeah. So you're like,
well,
oh, we won, but obviously that's still their goal. So you didn't really win. They just
some different people are there. So we got a new executive director out of this whole situation. So maybe we should go back and just review what the incident was in a little more detail. So in Florida, we had, obviously we have an issue with non-native Burmese pythons in the wild in South Florida, and hundreds of other species of non-native animals and plants. There's no denying that. And some of that is due to escaped and released pet trade animals. Others, it's due to animals that came in on cargo shipments, or all different kinds of ways that animals spread around. We're a global economy. Cargo is going everywhere. People are going everywhere all the time, and species are going to get spread around. And the climate seems to be warming. So Florida is kind of a perfect place for this, because we're a peninsula that extends into tropical climate. So a lot of tropical animals can establish here that couldn't naturally distribute here on their own. So we have pythons. The first records of Burmese pythons in Florida were in the 70s. But we think that Hurricane Andrew may have been a major event in maybe helping some kind of mass release. There's been reports that it hit some reptile facilities and released a bunch of pythons at one time, which seems like a reasonable theory based on everything we know about Hurricane Andrew. I mean, it just flattened tons of homes and buildings in South Florida in Miami-Dade County back in 1992. So by the early 2000s, we started seeing Burmese pythons pop up frequently in the wild. So we knew there was an established population. So reptile keepers actually worked with the state of Florida on a program which imposed some restrictions on keeping Burmese pythons in captivity. They created what was called the Reptiles of Concern program, or ROC, ROC. And then the problem is that even when you think you've fixed a problem, if there's still pythons in the news and people are freaking out about it, then they're going to is going to be this call for more solutions to the problem. So even though we feel like we fixed the issues on the captive side of things, new governors come in and they want to show that they're addressing the problem. And so they come up with a new program. So we ended up with a new program called the Conditional Species Program, or CSP. and that seemed to be very successful. And Burmese pythons were on that for I believe they've been regulated in Florida since like 2008, maybe even earlier. I can't remember the exact year, but we have keepers in that have been Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons and some other large species, amethystine pythons. And you can get a permit, but you had to show that you had biosecurity at your facility. So there were certain things you had to do. You had to have certain signage at your facility. You had to have certain caging restrictions, and you were inspected regularly by FWC to show that you were in compliance with these biosecurity systems. And another little aside is that when it looked like tegus were starting to become a problem as a non-native species in Florida, reptile keepers actually asked FWC to add tegus to the conditional species program. So there were some requirements to be able to keep them, but FWC declined to do that at that time. They weren't really interested in tegus, only pythons. So that was something that we actually tried to address back, I think, in 2008 or 2009. So that brings us to just a few years ago. The new regime at FWC was under a different executive director, Eric Sutton, and they really just seemed intent on just stamping out the reptile industry in Florida, and once again showing that they were fighting this war on invasive species or whatever. And they came up with the prohibited species program, which was way, way more restrictive. And it made it very hard for people, even people who had the animals in the past legally with permits, to comply. It imposed a lot of kind of draconian regulations. And it also said that you couldn't continue to breed and sell your animals. So if you had them, even if you had the old conditional species program, you just kind of had to keep them forever, even if you were able to get permitted. So, but you couldn't make any money off them, which is a difficult thing to ask if somebody has a large collection of large snakes, obviously. So that brings us to the situation with Chris Coffey. He had a conditional species permit, and he had all of these, he had a collection of Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons, but FWC told him that they weren't going to renew his permit. So he was kind of stuck with them. And actually, he was led to believe that he could get his permit renewed, but they didn't end up doing it. And then when they didn't renew his permit, they came and did what's called a constructive seizure, which means they technically said they seized the animals, but they told him he had to keep them. So they did nothing to care for them or feed them or anything like that, that he just had to care for them. And they said he couldn't get rid of them. He had to just keep them at his facility. They were seized, but he had to keep them. Well, this became a real problem because he was struggling to feed them and everything without being able to make any money off them. And I know some people were helping take care of the snakes, but essentially FWC just kind of froze his collection in place. Well, then they end up coming and checking. Apparently there was a report of an escaped reticulated python in Broward County. And I believe it was about 10 or 15 miles from Chris Coffey's facility. I mean, it isn't the kind of trek a snake could make if you know the terrain. It's all very urban, lots of highways. But they went and checked on Chris Coffey, supposedly to see if it was his snake that escaped. And it wasn't. But while they were there, they ended up killing his collection of Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons. And they still never released all the body cam to us from the officers. They said that they got Chris to sign some kind of paperwork allowing them to euthanize his animals. And he said he did it under duress. They said that he asked them to do it, but unfortunately, because the body cams were turned off during this there's a 20-minute gap in the body cam footage from the incident. we don't really know. So I can only go on what Chris Coffey has told me.
Listen,
and,
his
the
body cam's
officer
been
saying
turned
that
off.
he told them to euthanize the animals, it seems kind of hard to believe with the stories he's told. So anyways, they start killing his pythons with a bolt gun, which is a device used to euthanize animals. It basically, it has gunpowder in it, and when you fire it, it fires a bolt into the animal's brain. You put it up against the head. But what they did is they did one snake after another, and they had 4 different officers in them. Some had never handled snakes. And Chris Coffey had specifically told them that this one snake in the room was a boa, and that was Bill's boa, and it was pregnant, and not to mess with it. Well, they end up pulling out the boa and killing it anyway. So, and all of this is on camera. Chris Coffey set up his cell phone to record, and we have some of the officers' body cams, so it's well documented. So what they ended up doing was killing a boa that was gravid. I can't remember the morphs now. I should have reviewed this, but they were high-end morph boas.
Yeah, they were red dragons.
Oh, Jessica, I can't hear you right now.
Oh no. What do we do?
Oh no.
What about now? Oh, I think your headphones went out because you sounded different.
Jessica, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear you.
I think at some point, okay, how do we communicate? Let's do interpretive dance. At some point, your headphones lost connection. And then it's picking up from the phone. Beep, boop, beep, boop. Hello? Does that work? So you might want to turn it back on. Well, but everyone can hear both of us, so that's excellent.
Everybody out? Okay, I'm seeing the comment. We can hear both of you.
Yeah.
I'm not getting any of the lip reading. Do you just want me to keep talking here?
I don't know. Can you go out and then come back in? Do you get that? Or use the audio on your phone. Do you have... Oh, fuck. Okay. Well, we're doing our best. 100%. Did y'all hear when his audio fell out? We're doing great. Thank you. The charades are the best. I don't think anybody can really understand what I'm trying to communicate, though. I should probably have a whiteboard. I could write the questions on it. Wouldn't that be smarter than charades? How's everybody doing tonight? And I didn't mean to dredge up old news because most of you were here for it, but there are new people. Shut up. There are new people who don't even know about it because this was 2 years ago now, which it sounds crazy. Time flies. It was just 2023. No, 2 end of 22 into 23. That was a long time ago. That would have been really funny. I could still act that way, I guess. I guess Daniel died. Maybe I shouldn't have told him to go away. I should have used more interpretive dance or something to communicate. I think his headphones are... Oh, well.
All right. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Totally. Can you hear me? Fuck. All right. Yeah, maybe we will do that. I just need to get him to stay here. I don't... It's fine. Y'all are real team players. Let's all spam the chat with your favorite... fantasy novel series. How about that? And it could be romantasy. It could be high fantasy. It could be dirty, weird fantasy. Not like that, but maybe a little bit like that. Or what I should listen on audiobook when I drive up to Denver. How about that? That's even better. Fourth Wing. Mm-hmm. It is like playing phone tag, which may be fine. Redwall. Very good. I've read a couple of those when I was a kid. Wait, Daniel's back. What about now?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, thank God. All right. I guess if something bad happens, I will just write things on little pieces of paper. And it's a green piece of paper. That was a mistake. We'll talk in chat or something. Okay, let's go back. We were at Mr. Coffee's animals were being euthanized, and the boa, which was gravid with red dragons, hypothetically, was also euthanized at the same time.
Yes. So they killed the boa, and they acted surprised, and then all this, you can see this in a video that's on the USARK Florida YouTube page. But just a horrible incident, and not only the killing of the animals, but the way it was done. You can see the boa writhing on the floor for like 20 minutes after it was bolt gunned to the head, and a lot of the pythons are too. So the floor is just covered in bloody snakes. And if you Google this, Google pythons Florida FWC, you'll see these. You'll see these stories, and it's just a really disturbing event. And so it became a worldwide news story, and the attention was really focused on FWC. So at the same time, FWC was trying to impose this whitelist system, which would severely regulate what would come in and out of the state. So all this was coming together at the same time. So at the FWC commission meeting where they were supposed to vote on that, a bunch of reptile keepers showed up to voice their anger about the python and boa killing, but also about the whitelist thing. And the commission decided not to do it at the time. And it became and it was getting a lot of media coverage here in Florida. So it really looked like they would have just been sticking it to reptile keepers and punishing us after what they'd done. Now, fast forward to where we are now. If you watch the video, the FWC officers said that they would take care of it, that Bill McAdam would be reimbursed for the snake or whatever. He hired a lawyer. I think they filed a lawsuit against FWC. FWC has fought it all the way. They have not reimbursed him. They haven't really done anything to make the situation right in any way. They've actually tried to get the case dismissed. So it's still in court.
Still isn't dismissed though, technically.
Right.
It's just in like legal purgatory.
Well, yeah, I'm not totally up. I really need to talk to their attorney about this. I'm getting kind of a secondhand description of all this, but it's still going on, and there's no resolution, is what I can tell you for sure. Now, on the FWC side, they did. Eric Sutton resigned as their executive director not long before that incident happened, and then the assistant director, Thomas Eason, was acting director at the time of the incident. He interviewed for the job of executive director and didn't get it. So this is kind of decided by the governor's office and influenced by the commissioners also. But who did get the job was Roger Young, and that's who we currently have now. Now, he's been really good to work with for us. He's kept up open lines of communication, very, very different from the past regime. However, a lot of the people working at the agency are still some of the same people. Some of them aren't. Some of them are. Definitely, a lot of them don't like us, but it's kind of too bad. We've definitely changed things here in Florida, and we're pushing for more changes. So what's the executive director really wants to see done, and what we're in favor of now, is opening up collection of wild iguanas and tegus. FWC is really resisting the tegus part, but we're pushing for that also. And that is what most of the changes to non-native species regulations right now are focused on. Now, FWC is proposing kind of a really, really strict program that allows iguanas to be collected. But unfortunately, there's still so much red tape that we believe hardly anybody's going to do it if the rules stay the way that they've proposed them. So we're still pushing very hard and saying that you need to open this up to everybody. You should want as many people as are willing to do it to go out and collect iguanas, especially baby iguanas when they're all hatching. They're going to be hatching in a couple months here. Mm-hmm. And what's happened for the past 4 years since those became a prohibited species is that they were being collected out of the wild and sold through dealerships out of Florida, and we were supplying a lot of the world's pet iguanas. And what happened a few years ago when that stopped is that the imports of iguanas focus more on getting them out of Central America, especially El Salvador, and that's who's supplying most of the iguanas to the pet trade now. But the Florida iguanas are just growing up and breeding in the wild. And it's, hundreds of thousands or even millions of iguanas. We don't know exactly how many were going out, but it was a lot. It was at least hundreds of thousands. We know that. And those lizards are just staying out there in the wild breeding. So we've kind of had an explosion in the wild iguana population, and that's been covered by the media. And so what we're asking for is for people to be allowed to collect those iguanas, so that's supplying the pet trade again. And not only is this taking a non-native species out of the wild in Florida, but it's also could be helping reduce pressure on populations in their native range, which actually, believe it or not, iguanas are not common in all areas of their range. There are some places where pressure from hunting and collecting has reduced their numbers in their native range. Mm-hmm. So, we think if the trade could be supplied with Florida baby iguanas rather than imports, that would be a better situation. And at the same time, tegus are spreading. We believe the same thing with tegus. There's no reason why they shouldn't want these same collectors collecting the iguanas to be catching tegus, especially babies, and getting them out of the wild and getting them out of the state, because there is a demand for those. And right now they're just kind of staying out there and growing up, and they're going to be breeding.
What do you think you would need to tell FWC to convince them that collectors won't ranch?
Well, that's a good point. That is something that they say that they're concerned about. But the interesting thing is, we know that FWC actually the state of Florida is paying contractors to kill Burmese pythons, and the contractors are getting paid by the pound, and sometimes they get like a flat rate for baby pythons and stuff. Mm-hmm. So we have reports that people have collected and spread Burmese pythons around that, and some of the people are selling. There's a black market now for pythons where people who are not contractors are selling them to state contractors. So it's created this kind of black market. So I think that, and that's not to say I'm friends with a lot of python contractors. I'm not going to demean the program as a whole, but anytime there's a market for something, you can't guarantee that there will be no abuse, for sure. So with iguanas, they've almost kind of reached maximum density right now in Florida, where they're everywhere where they can spread to within their biological capacity. Mm-hmm. They aren't cold tolerant. Cold really knocks them back. So like where I live in North Central Florida, iguanas can't survive here in the winter. Mm-hmm. Our typical winter would kill every single iguana. But the further south you go, the more tropical it is, and you get iguanas. So is that a chance that that could happen? Yes, but right now there's really no danger of that because iguanas are just everywhere. They're extremely dense. And I believe most of the collectors who would be hitting them would be trying to collect all the babies that they could get. There are like kind of trophy hunters going after bigger iguanas right now. And there's a situation where even hunting guides are taking people out to kill iguanas. But a lot of times they're focusing on the biggest ones and leaving the small ones. That's what we're hearing. So, you know, it's not like that's that much different from the kind of ranching thing that you're talking about. So, you know, is it a system that could never be abused? No, but what we had was hundreds of thousands or millions of iguanas going out, and now we have almost none. So I don't know, as far as cost benefit, I don't know how you could justify no iguanas going out just because somebody might leave some or might reintroduce some as wild ones to breed.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I struggle with nihilism, obviously, where I'm like,
it's not hard to do.
It kind of doesn't matter anymore because South Florida's a whole hellhole anyway. So like, do whatever you want. Like whatever diversity that can persist is fine. But then I'm like, no, we got to be nice about it and just say like, no, we won't intentionally leave adults when we go to collect the eggs. We will also do a cursory check for at least breedable females and try to bring them down and euthanize them and collect the eggs.
Well, here's the thing. This is one of the things we're pushing them on is they want pit tagging. First, they wanted pit tagging for all iguanas. And what that's done, where any iguana collected, including just to be wholesaled and exported out of state for $5 or $10 or whatever, it had to be pit tagged. Well, for one thing, you can't really pit tag newborn baby iguanas. They're just too small. You're going to kill a lot of them trying. And but now, so they're kind of like acting like they're making a compromise with us. They're going to let go of pit tagging on iguanas under 5 inches. Well, the problem with that is it still stops most people from collecting big ones, because if you don't allow, if you make people pit tag them, it's just another barrier that's going to make them not want to do it. So most collectors are going to say, well, why am I going to want to do more work and collect a big one that they're going to make me pit tag? And ultimately, there's less demand for larger iguanas as pets because most people want to raise an iguana as a pet. So you should want some incentive. But another thing we've asked for is they're saying that if any eggs are laid, that you have to destroy the eggs. And we're trying to convince them that, hey, if somebody collects a gravid female iguana and they're able to hatch the eggs, that's a good payday for them if you allow it to happen. So why should we not encourage something where there's an incentive to collect gravid female iguanas? And if you're just telling them
after she lays her eggs,
well, you can collect the gravid iguana and she'll lay eggs in captivity, and then you would have a whole clutch of 20, 40, 60.
But they want no iguanas, right? So like you have to prove to them through whatever olive branch of murder that you also want no iguanas. So like you have to euthanize her at some point, because unless you just keep her indefinitely. Would that be the plan?
Well, I mean, we think that the sale should still be legal of the adult iguana. We're not accepting any forced euthanasia. After what we've dealt with FWC, and one of the other stipulations in this program that they announced to us a couple weeks ago was that if the collector can't legally sell the animals on their own, they have to be some kind of registered agent of a dealership that is licensed, which is also another crazy. It's just too much red tape again. People should be able to collect the iguanas and own the iguanas and sell them to who they want. That is legal to own the iguanas also. So what they were saying is that if the collector's not able to move the iguanas within 2 weeks, that they'll have to euthanize them. Well, we're just we're past the forced euthanasia thing here in Florida. We're not going to accept that. We don't want FWC coming in with bolt guns. And I don't want to, I reminded them in the meeting to think about what they thought that trying to humanely euthanize 200 baby iguanas would look like. I mean, with a bolt gun or whatever. Is that really what you're going for here? So no, we're just not willing to accept that. We think that they should encourage people to collect and sell the iguanas,
even the
adults and babies.
Mean. Okay.
Well, if that's something that people want to do, there's not that much of a demand for it. So like I said, but some people, if they want to work with an animal like that and it can help get them out of the wild, I think that's an option that should still be
if somebody wants to, we're all about consent around here. I just think,
God.
Like, I can see what they're coming up. There's a perverse incentive to like nurture the adults in your area so they have lots of eggs and keep them away from those weird bow hunter people.
Well, let's consider
around.
What's happening right now. Most of the people who would be doing this in South Florida, every backyard is full of iguanas, every canal bank, the roadsides, in the urban areas. They really don't seem to invade into the natural habitats that much. So you're so worried about an animal escaping or being left to live where they already live in very dense populations. It's just a silly concern, in my opinion.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Largemouth bass are not native, right?
Largemouth bass are native, yes. It's the peacock bass. The peacock bass is introduced
on purpose to lakes for sportsman-like activities.
Okay, lots. Yes, so that's true, and we have our own Florida subspecies of largemouth bass that Florida is very protective of, apparently, because they've been hard about people breeding those. But it's now legal to breed Florida largemouth bass in captivity for aquaculturists.
Yes, legal?
It is legal.
What if we turn iguanas into a game fish somehow? Because the rules seem to be different for fish.
Well, here's something interesting. The peacock bass is a game fish in Florida, and it's a non-native species that's introduced by FWC. They regulate how many can be taken out of the wild. It's a fish that's eating other fish, including our native sunfish and everything. Like, it's a predator. It's a large predator that's eating lots of other fish. But because this animal is just viewed in a different way, because it's valued for sport, they're kind of semi-protected, you know?
This is true, like, across the whole country, by the way. Everyone is like, oh yeah, we got to have game fish here. But people have like very narrow limits of what they think a game fish is. And it often doesn't include a native fish in that stream, but sometimes it does. And then they just introduce that, and they accidentally introduce bullfrogs and snapping turtles on accident at the same time. And they're like, "What's a daisy?" You know.
As a biologist, if I could say something on that real quick, I think it's an unrealistic expectation that biodiversity is going to continue at some kind of stasis level for all time. The earth is changing, temperatures are changing, our habitats are changing. So in Florida, the iguanas are living mostly in human modified habitats, like on canal banks or in yards. Well, what we've done is create habitat for non-native species. Most of our native species don't live there. If you look at the range of the iguana, it's found in the belt of tropical countries now, almost around the entire world, around the equator. There are other things people are concerned about as invasive species, like there's a giant land snail. It's found almost around the entire belt of the equator, around the entire world. A lot of these things are just kind of unstoppable. They end up wherever people are, and there's not much you can do about it. So bullfrogs, snapping turtles, they're all very hardy species that do well where people are. And unfortunately, I think we're heading for a world where animals that live well around people are going to be the ones that survive over more specialized species. But I don't know that there's a whole lot we can do to
Well, the problem
impact
is
that.
the
I mean,
government has a mandate, hypothetically, to defend biodiversity because we want them to do that, hypothetically. But now they're up against the rock and hard place, literally an impossible, insurmountable task to defend all biodiversity, which they are forced to do. And the reality that weedy species that cohabitate with our dumb landscapes and habitats that we like do better. And so then, like, there's not infinite money to do that, and we do what we want. We love golf courses. Whoa, we're such idiots. And so I don't blame any government agency. Like, I just visited like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service training center all the time, and they're all the people that are like, we're getting sued constantly, just constantly from both sides, because like their mandate is so strong and good technically, but they could never
and I think most of the people who get into that, their heart's in the right place, but the reality is an agency given a conservation mandate like that, they're not ever given the funds or the resources to actually accomplish what their goals are supposed to be. And it's not the most
they write
politically
a management plan for an isopod in a cave somewhere, and then they file that, and they're like, hopefully no nitrates get in there, but there's no actual plan to ensure that this cave is actually safe.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to write the plan, so it's real.
So I mean, what I really would like to see, this is my own personal view, is habitats protected. I mean, wild places conserved, and we do the best we can. It's not going to all stay the same, but this idea in Florida of we need to individually target each non-native species and try to take them out, while at the same time the bulldozers are rolling over hundreds of thousands of acres of habitat every year, and we're wrecking all of the natural landscapes. It just seems like a little flaw in our priorities. If we're going to have no natural landscapes, but we want all natural biodiversity, it's just not going to work out
over here in this 1 acre pasture. Very pure. Everywhere else is a strip mall, but this part over here is perfectly pristine. But I think the Center for Biological Diversity, no offense to them, I think it's still coming from the right place, right? Like the right intentionality. But I think there's not enough money in the world to fix what's going on. So you almost have to be like, what are the ecosystem services that this species provides, even if it's not native? And
I don't know. I could tell you all
invasive. I
could tell you all about Center for Biological Diversity. I definitely have my issues with them, but I know some of the people that work for them, and a lot of times we're on the same side of conservation issues, like gopher tortoise issues and stuff. But Center for Biological Diversity on this FWC killing pythons issue came out basically in favor of FWC and said it's unfortunate that the government has to kill people's pets because humans are irresponsible and aren't responsible pet owners. I mean, that was basically what they said in the media. So I can't really agree on that, but I think Center for Biological Diversity makes a lot of their money. They basically operate as a law firm suing the federal government over ESA violations. And they've been able to turn that into a revenue stream because U.S. Fish and Wildlife can't comply with ESA because they don't have the funding and the resources to do it. So CBD knows that they'll win these lawsuits because there's no way that U.S. Fish and Wildlife can comply. So it's kind of become a revenue generation system for them, where they just petition to list hundreds of species at a time to ESA, Endangered Species Act, and then when U.S. Fish and Wildlife can't respond in the amount of time that the law requires, they're in violation of the law technically, and then CBD gets to sue to have their legal fees reimbursed, which they are a bunch of lawyers, so they're the ones charging the legal fees. So you see where this is going here.
Yeah.
So I think the problem with a lot of organizations, especially when they get big and have tons of money, is that they kind of just start to exist just to
exist.
Perpetually exist. Yeah, exactly. So can I address
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can I address what's up on the screen right now?
Yeah, sure. That's Eileen. That's sort of what I was getting at. It's like if you could, because the adults probably aren't preyed upon by jaguars and Jargundis at the appropriate rate because they're living in a subsidized habitat that's sort of, they get hit by cars, probably that's pretty good. And they get picked up by YouTubers using a bow and arrow. But is there enough of pressure on the adults that the recruitment rate is too much? So you could.
Well, they don't. Iguanas don't tend to live in areas of Florida that have too many natural predators. Like that's why when you get out into the glades, the temperatures also get cooler. But where you have a lot of predators, you don't have a lot of iguanas. So they're definitely benefiting.
Jaguars in downtown Miami is what I'm saying.
Hey, sounds cool to me. But you know what? When we're talking about eating the animals, I think something that's interesting to talk about. South Florida, Southeast Florida, I think one of the python researchers told me that it has the second highest mercury concentration of anywhere on Earth. So apparently and this builds up in the pythons. So that's a concern. They recommend against eating the bass in South Florida. I see the comment is adults get made into burgers. I think talking about iguanas, I wouldn't want to eat one, partly because these canals that they live along, they just blanket them with herbicides constantly. Like if there's any green on the bank, they spray it and kill it. So these iguanas are eating like Roundup and Diquat and all this stuff that we know never goes away, these forever chemicals. So I don't know that the studies have been done on iguanas specifically, but I'd be concerned about eating an animal that is an herbivore living on a canal where they constantly spray herbicides. And I think that's just part of the broken system of South Florida too. Like we have an unhealthy ecosystem for all these reasons. Our manatees are dying. I just saw an article where our dolphins are dying from a lot of the same stuff that's killing the manatees. And so even the animals that aren't dying from the toxins have the toxins. So, I can't really endorse eating a lot of these animals. So a lot of the python guys just tell me they would not eat an adult python, especially out of the Everglades.
Okay, Daniel has a couple $1 trillion. What is Daniel's perfect permaculture vision for South Florida, where people can live there, animals can live there, and
no people.
Well,
I don't know how much money it takes to get rid of all the people.
What about the Seminole Indians fully repatriated to anywhere they want to be and everybody else kicked out? What about that?
Yeah, sure. The Seminoles have kicked out, and the Miccosukis, I believe, have kicked out a lot of the government python contractors and stuff too. They don't they're not very cooperative with any government workers.
I love them actually. They're very feral because they're like the internal insurgency that was never defeated in the U.S. The only one, like Indian wise, because there's I'm going to the swamp. See y'all later. Bye. So maybe they should just have dominion. What about that? What if we just turn the whole thing into res?
Well, it's an interesting proposition. The Seminoles and the Miccosukis are two main tribes down there. Also, are different. The Seminoles descend from the, I believe, mostly the Creek Indians, which came from North Florida and South Georgia and Alabama. But the Miccosukis are the descendants of the Calusa Indians, which naturally inhabited South Florida. But they were the ones that killed Ponce de Leon. They never surrendered. They were known as being mean and always fighting. So the Seminoles have the U.S. government has generally considered them more agreeable even than the Miccosukis.
All right, so we put the Miccosukis in charge. I don't know. I mean, these are like huge questions, but like, storm surges are an existential threat to South Florida, and so then you're like, do we want to pay to keep rebuilding stuff, or just let it be a swamp again? What about that? Let's.
Well, when we get into that, I mean, we're just continuing. There's a project in South Florida after mangroves are protected habitat, supposedly, but developers are constantly trying to find ways around that to get their hands on even the mangrove habitats. And in
Do you have an example? Do they just like accidentally chop them all down? They're like, ugh. It's not actually.
Well, and I think it was, what was the last one? I'm getting all the hurricane names mixed up now. We've had so many now, but the last one that hit South Florida, the big one, really wrecked a mangrove forest, and it's an area where I have friends that are doing research on terrapins and other animals there. And when the marina had been trying to get their hands on that land to make part of the marina. But they couldn't because it was protected mangroves. But then when the mangroves got destroyed by the hurricane, they took that opportunity to fill and develop the land because it wasn't considered mangrove habitat anymore, even though mangroves, they were trying to replant mangroves to reestablish the mangrove forest there. So they took the opportunity while the mangroves had been knocked back, which it was still kind of a mangrove forest, but just a lot of the trees had been wrecked, to take that land and make it a part of the marina. So that stuff's just happening constantly on a huge scale here in Florida.
This is a good segue. Do you want to talk about James Gaddis's story a little bit?
Well, we had an issue in that came up and got a lot of attention here in Florida last year, where it was found that there was a plan in the Florida DEP, so our Department of Environmental Protection, which manages all of our state parklands, and some lobbyists had met with the governor, who ended up getting word down to the agency that they wanted to try to develop golf courses and pickleball courts and all kinds of additional recreational opportunities in our state parks. We have beautiful state parks here in Florida. We're known as having some of the world's or the nation's best state park system. And it came out that they were forcing this mandate, and people started protesting, and it became a big political issue. And we only found out about that apparently because this whistleblower came out and outed it to the media. So after he did that, he got fired from DEP and I think one of the reasons they listed in his termination was like violation of public trust or something, which he was the only one that was actually, acting in good faith with the public trust in the opinion of many. But, it turned out some of our big developers and politically connected people in Florida were part of that. And there were certain companies that were going to make money from developing these parks, and they would have bulldozed gopher tortoise habitat, scrub jay habitat, some of our most sensitive species, and they had specific plans to do that. But so that was killed. But even as that stopped, we've had issues like there's some state forest land not far from where I am right now, in Citrus County, or that is being traded to a golf course, to be developed for a golf course. And they justified that by saying, well, we're trading this land and we're getting more land in exchange somewhere else. But that other land is lowland habitat that's not nearly as ecologically valuable, tree farm habitat, whereas the land that's going to be turned into a golf course is upland sandhill habitat, which has a lot of our most threatened species here in Florida. So there's an issue right now where along Silver Glen Springs Run in North Florida, it's all national forest land, except there's a tract that's privately owned by a hunting club along the spring run. And it's one of the most beautiful places in Florida. I mean, it's just a gorgeous place. And there's a proposal now to develop that hunt club land and build some big fancy houses along there. And not at the same time, there's a proposal at the next FWC meeting to stop boats from being allowed to anchor in that spring run. Yeah, there you've got it pulled up. You can see the water, how the water turns more like turquoise close to the spring.
Yeah.
That's I believe what's called a first magnitude spring. It's just pumping out hundreds of gallons of water out of Florida's aquifer. And you can also see there where there are boats in there. But the thing is, they're doing this now. They're going to stop the boats from going in there, which is a popular recreational activity. And they say it's to protect the seagrass, but it just so happens to be at the same time that they want to build this development all along the spring. So it seems more likely that the
national refuge.
So all that green everywhere around there is mostly national forest land. It's part of Ocala National Forest.
It's just they're trying to buy this peninsula from the hunt.
So that little section, well, the hunt club is selling out to the developer, I guess.
Great.
So that little area, which is just gorgeous, one of the most beautiful places. I mean, if you look up some pictures of what Silver Glen Springs look like, you'll see. They're going to stop boaters from anchoring.
It's a party place.
Yeah, it is a party place. But it's really because the people who are they want to make the land more valuable by excluding boaters. So only the people who live there will be allowed to boat there. It doesn't always look like that. There are more boats on holiday weekends and stuff, but it's a popular place to go. But it's still a really pretty place. And manatees go in there, as you can see.
The devil. Is it warm enough in the winter for them to overwinter there? Or is it? Yes.
So that spring run flows into Lake George, which is actually a really big, wide part of the St. Johns River. So they come from the Atlantic Ocean down the St. Johns River, and they go up into all these spring runs. And the water in there stays like a constant 72 degrees or so. And especially on the coldest days, tons of manatees will just jam up into these springs. And that's how they're able to tolerate our cold winters.
How do they get in there? Do they come down from Jacksonville or north from...
Yeah. So if you follow the St. Johns River from Jacksonville, you'll see that it comes all the way down there from Lake.
I didn't realize manatees were that far inland. Does that make me out of touch with manatee lifestyle?
And manatees even get into Lake Okeechobee, right in the middle of the state. Yeah, they distribute up rivers and anywhere where the water stays warm enough.
That's really fun, actually. You can have a manatee encounter at any time.
You can, as long as there's the problem with a lot of places is that there are dams or big locks, and manatees even go through those with boats sometimes, but a lot of them get crushed trying to go through the locks of the dams. So in Lake Okeechobee, they get there sometimes, which is amazing, but they have to go through a maze of all these canals and locks.
But you can lift them out whenever to put them back somewhere where they can graze. Is there enough food in Okeechobee?
Well, there would be if we didn't spray it all with herbicide. The ridiculous thing is that manatees are eating. In a lot of the canals, their main food is water lettuce and water hyacinth and hydrilla, which are considered our worst invasive plants in Florida, even though lots of animals eat them, lots of fish use them as habitat. But they go and just blanket all of our waterways with herbicide in the name of destroying invasives. Meanwhile, our manatees are starving and they're being poisoned and they're wrecking all the habitat because they don't just target invasive plants, they kill all the plants when they blanket spray herbicides. So that's another thing in Florida that's just become a huge political issue is the widespread spraying of herbicides. And of course, the companies that do this all have lobbyists and they're giving money to all the politicians in Tallahassee. So the whole system is like propped up to continue doing the things that are making certain companies money.
Right, because they could do more work and not spray and cut whatever water lettuce or pathways or whatever for boats, or they don't technically spray, but if you have a contract for spraying, you're like, oops.
I mean, there's no doubt that the spraying is a more efficient method of removal. Mechanical removal is what they did before they were spraying everything, and it was more costly, but the goal was not to eliminate. Nobody had believed they were going to eliminate the plants by mechanical removal. You were just treating it to keep waterways open for boats and stuff like that.
No, but if everybody dies from cancer, including you, who cares if there's no invasive plants in the pond anymore?
I know. And
sorry.
Listen,
I swam in the Shenandoah. It's full of PCBs. That's what's wrong with me. So we're all in this together now, buddy.
And there's an executive order now federally to log 60% of our national forests.
We're doing great. We're all gonna make it. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of like, I don't know, creating a literal scapegoat out of iguanas or Burmese pythons to be like, man, if we just fuck over this one lizard, it'll solve all of our problems. But the problems are like bigger and more amorphous, and so everyone's like, we can't solve any of these other problems, like the revolving door between industry and environmental positions, where they don't actually care about anything. They're just trying to like keep the laws as chill as possible, and so they'll penalize a particularly charismatic, large invasive animal on purpose. So it has nothing to do with whether or not it's actually doing that much damage. Just sounds good on paper to have an easy victory and fuck over a baby iguana somewhere. But
you've really hit the nail on the head, because
sorry.
Some of our commissioners on our wildlife commission are mostly developers. I think until a couple years ago, they were all developers, all 7 commissioners. So on one hand, they're trying to make it look like they care about the environment, and the governor is saying that he's pro-conservation, because most Floridians actually are pro-conservation, regardless of our widespread politics. But sometimes it's easier to just take on enemies that aren't going to stop big industries from making money. And let's be clear. I'm for, our reptile keepers being able to benefit economically from some of these programs, but nobody's really getting rich off collecting iguanas, not like development in Florida. But if we can kind of distract people with this shiny object here, look, we're fighting invasive species, and this is how we're saving the environment in Florida. Meanwhile, they're bulldozing everything in the state. That's what they're going to do. And there's actually even a nonprofit that supports our Fish and Wildlife Agency here in Florida called the Florida Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And if you look through the members of that, it's all of Florida's kind of biggest polluting corporations and biggest environmental destroyers. And at the commission meetings every few months, they often give awards to these big companies that are like mining companies or herbicide companies, or for their environmental stewardship. So Mosaic Mining Company got an environmental award, or got recognized at the FWC meeting a couple months ago. And that's a company that's like mined, the better part of 3 counties in Florida. And there's a very high cancer rate in those counties because of all the exposed radioactive material.
Like 0.1% of their net profits into a slush fund, and that got reinvested into a playground somewhere that had like one
literally
sand on it. So
there's a documentary on where in the area that's mined, a Mosaic playground, now that you bring this up, where somebody took like a Geiger counter or whatever it is that measures radioactivity.
Oh my God. you serious? Keep going.
And they found that the playground was more radioactive than like the Fukushima nuclear spill site
I bet
in
those
Japan.
Kids are so smart, brother.
Yeah, well, you know, I won't comment on that. I mean, I am from Polk County, Florida, where they say that's an acronym for people of little knowledge. But I know some smart people from Polk County, but you know, the problem is a lot of people and even pets die of cancer at younger. There's a very high incidence of early death from cancer in those areas. So, you know, we know it's bad, but the company with the biggest money that also employs a lot of people holds the political reins of power. So
maybe Noah needs to bring the flood back, is what I'm saying.
Florida was underwater at one time. It probably should happen again someday.
Let's go. Sorry, Florida. I was born in Florida. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
My family lived in Lutz. I don't know how
to
pronounce it.
Okay. Yeah, Lutz.
And
that's how people say here.
Okay. And I always wanted to move back, but now I'm like, it's just, I don't know what to do with it anymore. What do you do with it?
I love Florida. It's my home. You know, like some people say, why don't you just give up? Like, just go somewhere else. But I still want to fight because I love our state and I love our natural places, especially. And I like certain things about our culture, not everything, but you know, you call me a Florida man up there. I mean, there is this kind of spirit of independence and freedom that
part's fun.
I thought we embraced, but actually it turns out sometimes it's just you're free to do as we say. And that can be the philosophy of our government here. But I can't encourage people to move here. I really don't want most of you here, but I still want to try to make it the best place that I can while I'm here.
That's very good sentiment. Thank you for solving all of our nihilism right at the end. Yeah, I struggle with this all the time because I'm like, oh my God, what do we do? And then I'm like, whatever. You just have to try to be nice to people and animals in the environment as best you can because it's the only thing you can't do, really. Like, because the systemic stuff is not going to fix, you know.
But we can expose it. I mean, that's what the fun thing is to me sometimes, is kind of exposing corruption and hypocrisy. And I like going up against power. So
okay. This is like,
it's
slightly farcical question, but what if you end up in a black bag in a bay somewhere in little pieces? What are you going to do to prevent that from happening? I'm kind of kidding, but kind of not.
Well,
yikes.
I don't want to go too tinfoil hat, but that has been a concern. That has been a concern.
It's scary. People are weird when money's involved.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a concern, and
firearm.
I think so. I won't talk about that, but
don't tell me about it. OPSEC.
I'm in Florida, okay?
Yeah.
What do you think?
All right, good. I think about it a lot because, like, I mean, I don't know. People get disappeared all the time. And you're like, what is happening? And there's a lot of swamps and gators. Be easy to.
I'll take the gators.
All right, good. Maybe they'll accept you with open
mouths.
Arms. No, they'll be friends.
There was a great story a couple days ago about a crocodile on Sanibel Island in Florida. You should Google it when you get a chance. But this crocodile, there's only 2 crocodiles on the island that they know of, and there's never been successful reproduction of American crocodiles on Sanibel. Whenever they've had a crocodile, usually it's just been a female. They had a resident female for years, and she laid infertile eggs. Well, there are 2 crocs now, and they think it's possible that one of them is a male. And this croc, the female, has decided to nest in an old lady's yard on Sanibel. And the news went out and did an interview with her, and she said, well, you know, it's their territory, and am I happy to have it in the yard? No, but as long as she stays away from the house, she's okay. and she says, I really, everybody should see this animal. It's just such a beautiful, fascinating animal. And it's just this nice little old white-haired old lady that has a big crocodile trying to build a nest in her yard. And I think it's such a beautiful thing because it's the opposite of so many of the reptile stories we hear in Florida that are all about conflict.
Think most people are normal. What do you think about that? Just like they're normal humans that like animals and plants and nature and each other. What about that theory?
I think that's our natural inclination, but I think there are times when you can kind of be brainwashed into thinking otherwise.
Right, when they accidentally
especially when they're
kill iguanas and they were like catching them on fire and hitting them with shopping carts and stuff, because like you're just like intentionalizing violence or what? I don't know. It was very strange.
Yeah, and it's kind of sick. I mean, I'm not anti-hunting or anything in general, but kind of the bloodlust part of it is really weird, and I think it says something kind of scary about us as a culture.
You want old ladies that are like happy to share their space with a crocodile making a nest, not people who are like, I need to be on the bloodlust hunt for an invasive species and beat it to death with a shopping cart. That's like
and it's kind of like not even acknowledging that this isn't a real living creature that feels pain and stuff. Sometimes when it's an invasive species, it's kind of like this way of treating it like an other, just like obviously we do with people and prejudice and all that kind of stuff. So
I don't know, it's very hard because you're like, I 100% believe a lot of people are kind, and then so that's like they can't all collectively be kind because sometimes we do terrible things. So then I'm like, but the impulse is always to like isolate a human down from the pack and make them be kind, and then they'll be like, oh.
So how do you consolidate this belief in the goodness of people with your nihilism?
I don't know. I'm in a state of existential crisis at all times, actually.
Have you studied Nietzsche at all?
Yeah, too much.
Yeah, I mean, I did not a deep dive, but I've done a shallow dive into Nietzsche lately. But I found that I just thought he was kind of an asshole when it comes to
I mean, he doesn't believe that people have any value intrinsically, like each one, and so he's very sort of mean-spirited. But I prefer more like, I don't know, even the, no offense everybody, the dumbest person possible that is not competent in any way can still be like incredibly kind and helpful and good and still do good, even if it's very small good. But it's like collective actions of good are actually like very, it sounds so dumb what we're talking about right now.
It's not. I mean, we're getting into kind of the basis of ethics and
small amounts of kindness, no matter how they occur, are enough to have society function. If everyone was Nietzsche and was like manipulating and 4D chessing each other and I'm smarter than you, society doesn't function. We just need to be nicer to each other, to animals, to plants, and to the environment. We will do better if we all just increase net niceness. In my opinion, I don't know how you interpret
increase net niceness.
Yes, please. I want the graph to go up for being nice. How about that?
Yeah.
Even if it hurts you a little bit, you could just be nicer, and because then everyone will be nicer to each other. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess you get into what is incentivized now, and I think unfortunately we're in a little bit of a time where being a jerk is incentivized by society. So
right, but fuck them. I will fight jerks to make them nice. Because like it's a zero-sum game eventually. Like everybody can't own everybody else. Like I'm gonna own you and I'm gonna be mean to you and I'm gonna bulldoze these turtles. There's no turtles. Now we all have cancer and nobody has any money. Like what is the point of living if we're all trying to win? We can't all win. We win together by being nice.
Well, I guess a lot of times the point is for at least a lot of the people in power in Florida is to die with the most money and stuff possible. But when you die, you don't get to take it with you. So,
right. And Florida is fun and the place people want to visit and live because it's like a magical paradise that happens to just be accidentally attached to the US. And we're just like lucky that it happened to be there. And it looks pretty and it's tropical and snowbirds can come down. But if you fuck it over, it won't be nice anymore. So it will be hot. Congratulations. But that'll be all it is. It's a hot strip mall suburb.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's and what is beautiful about Florida is our natural environment and our wildlife, and yeah, some of the freedom and culture. But if we're all stuck in traffic jams and our land is completely covered by concrete and it's a never-ending strip mall, like you said, what's the appeal in that? Our quality of life as Floridians has gone down. So yeah, at a certain point, you got to say, what's it all worth? What is real progress?
Right. I don't know. I don't think we're going to solve any of life's problems today, though.
No, we've solved a lot of them tonight,
okay,
though.
Did we? I just I don't ever really want to be nihilistic because I think nihilism comes from someone who's immensely disappointed. Like they were an optimist. They were hoping things could be good, like they could fix an environmental problem or feed hungry people, but then they're like, insurmountable institutional just people who just don't care. And so then, but you fight it by just like daily acts of maybe resistance, small ones.
Definitely. And
like
in Florida,
the guy who didn't like the spraying, he hasn't updated a video in a long time. Do you remember his name?
The guy who didn't like the spraying?
Right. He's like, stop spraying my ducks in my pond.
The spraying. I thought you said the spring. I'm like, who doesn't like the spring?
Yeah, I like the spring. Is he okay? Did he get disappeared into a swamp? Do you know anything about him?
It depends on which guy. There are several that don't like the spraying.
Okay.
I haven't seen. If it's one that I'm thinking of, I haven't seen him in a little while. But I think people take their turns at kind of activism and passion in the fight. And when you don't win right away, sometimes it's disheartening and you lose interest. But there are certain people that have to continue to step up and continue the fight.
What do you use to like renew your interest in advocating for reptiles in Florida? What do you think fills your cup up?
Going out and seeing them in the wild. I mean, that's just the other day I was in Tallahassee and I met with legislators in the legislature. And I met with agency leaders and stuff. And a lot of that gets to be disheartening, especially the politics, because you see what's really the big money interests, how they're controlling everything. But then I just went out in the woods and I found some snakes, and that totally revamped my whole. That's even when I'm, it's not everything's directly involved in saving the wild snakes in Florida, but I can always go back to if I'm fighting the power. It's a lot of times the same people that are bulldozing our habitat in Florida that are also trying to kill our boas and stop us from being able to collect iguanas and everything else. So you just kind of have to focus it all in that way. But yeah, it's just being out in the woods. Even if I don't see any reptiles, just being there, it puts me in a more peaceful place. And one day I might not come back. I don't know.
It's gonna go run off.
You won't know if I just.
But there will be signs, like twig figures left on your doorstep.
Yeah. And when I'm at home, it's this one.
The doggy.
Caroline, say hi.
Oh, she's sweet and old. Does she like hiking?
She likes staying in the car and sitting next to me.
Okay.
And she likes barking at cows. That's what we did some of yesterday. Yeah, she actually barked at a coyote yesterday in a cow pasture that seemed to be stalking some baby cows and scared it away. So she did her good deed yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen a Florida pine ever?
Yeah, lots of them.
Oh, lots of them. What's the best spot for Florida pines catching?
Well, I would not say the best spot
or using them
out loud on the internet. I can tell you the best spot was an area that we surveyed, and we found pine snakes every time we went, and then they built a highway over it.
Oh.
They actually, when they excavated gopher tortoise burrows, they found 2 pine snake nests when they were doing the burrow excavation, and they hatched those eggs and did FWC. One of my friends who's a biologist with FWC released them nearby in the state forest. But that kind of thing, we just see it all the time. And pine snakes, the problem is they live on a lot of the same areas that are being developed because they're high and dry. But yeah, if that's something you wanted to see, we could probably help make it happen. But I tend to be pretty secretive about herping spots because I don't want to see any of you there. But it's pine snakes are actually not as hard to find as a lot of people think. They're secretive animals, but if you know how to look and where to look, they bask in the spring and fall when the temperatures are mild. You can walk and find them in especially areas with a lot of pocket gophers. You can find them basking near pocket gopher mounds or gopher tortoise burrows. And then you can also road cruise for them, especially in the spring and fall when snakes are really moving. You can road cruise during the day. And in certain areas, you'll even find them, you'll find babies right at dark in certain spots that have pine snakes. So it's a snake that it's not as like common as a corn snake or a scarlet king snake, but it's not impossible to find.
Interesting. Maybe Jennifer will come down and we'll herp them up here in a minute. We're going to West Texas next month, so.
That'll be awesome. Well, gopher snakes are, they call all of them bull snakes in Texas, but they're much more common than our pine snakes in Florida, for sure.
You're right. What did the nest look like? Asked Lisa. The pine snake nest in the gopher snake.
Didn't see it with my own eyes. My understanding is that they scraped the mouth of a tortoise burrow, and the nest was like in the apron of the tortoise burrow. So where the tortoise digs out all the sand, there's a big pile of sand at the entrance of his burrow. And I think they found one nest in the actual apron of the burrow, and they found another nest just scraping the ground somewhere else. So I didn't actually see it, but I'm assuming that might have been in some kind of rodent burrow or something.
How much digging do you think they do that's not using someone else's burrow? Because they seem to dig. Even my bull snakes seem to dig. Like they look like they're digging.
Well,
there's like intentionality in what's going on.
Well, I mean, we know northern pine snakes, people observe them actually digging nests in New Jersey and stuff. So that's something that's well documented. So they've been seen excavating the nest with their nose. So I think it's harder to say with pine snakes in Florida because they're usually using other animals' burrows, but still one of their main predation strategies is on pocket gopher burrows. And what pocket gophers do is if they're getting chased by a pine snake, they'll throw up a wall of dirt. And one of the things that pine snakes are able to do is just kind of burst through that wall of dirt with that hard snout and get to the pocket gopher. And in these burrows, they're not able to completely wrap around the pocket gopher. It's a pretty decent sized rodent to constrict it. So they'll usually press their body and press the gopher against the side of the burrow to suffocate it. And most pine snakes, adult pine snakes in these areas that have pocket gophers will have a scar in the exact same place on their neck from getting bit by pocket gophers. So almost every single big adult has it, but you'll notice there are certain areas that don't have pocket gophers in Florida that still have pine snakes. and the snakes there don't have that scar. They're a lot less beat up. So I don't know that we know exactly how the pine snakes are living in the areas without pocket gophers, but we know that they're, it's a pretty hardcore struggle. But they definitely push through sand a lot. They're a lot of times in very small rodent burrows. So I'm sure they're enlarging those burrows all the time. And gopher tortoise burrows a lot of times have little side burrows made by rodents and insects. So I'm sure they're exploiting all of that as refugia.
I think Eileen's asking about the species of pocket gopher.
Ours is Pinetus, I believe. You can double check me on that. It's the southeastern pocket gopher, and I know the Midwestern United States, I think, has the Baird's pocket gopher, named after the same person that the Baird's rat snake is named after. But I believe ours is Pinetus.
Miss Pinetus. Do you have all those little weird shrews that are like micro sized too, or is it too standy?
Yes. No, we have I've trapped a ton of shrews. We have the southeastern shrew and the short-tailed shrew. I know because I've done a lot of drift fence trapping studies.
Yeah, I think people, how people think like snakes don't exist in the wild or something because like there would be no mammalian prey that's small enough. And I'm like, set up a drift fence in a forest. There's so many teeny tiny little shrews. You're like, this is nothing. Yeah, there's food. There's mammalian food that's smaller than you think. I think.
Yeah, when we have so many, I just love the rodent diversity. The beautiful species of mice we have. We have a little one called a golden mouse that has a prehensile tail that climbs, and so it can use its tail kind of like wrap around branches and vines and stuff. And it's like a really pretty golden color. It looks like some morph of mouse that you would get in a pet store. Yeah, and that yeah. Awesome. So that's a very common. I have them in my yard. Yeah, it's a beautiful animal, and we have a Florida mouse that's a protected species, and old field mouse and cotton mouse. But we have all these different rice rat, wood rat, all kinds of cool rodents, cotton rat, and snakes are eating them all. So and it's most people just see mice and rats. They don't really think about all the different species. But when you really start catching all this stuff and identifying, it's like, wow, this is a whole nother rabbit hole, as they say.
Yeah, that's why drift fences are fun in a lot of ways. You get lots of weird beetles and stuff that you didn't know about. And you would never really necessarily interact with a shrew in the same way you would if it didn't fall in a bucket. Because even if you flipped it, it could go away so fast you barely even notice it.
Yeah.
But so everyone should do a drift fence if they feel like it. Just check on it so things don't go in there and die. Because that's bad.
Well, yeah, and you really need to check them frequently. One thing that I really like that's happening more is camera trapping drift fences. So like they're studying indigo snakes and diamondback rattlesnakes right now just with cameras at drift fences, and they're using AI. They're even able to individually identify rattlesnakes, analyzing their pattern. So I think that's really cool as a presence absence detection tool where you don't actually have to catch the animals and maintain the fence to make sure that you're not killing or dehydrating any animals or anything like that.
Awkward fun fact. Before I did my master's thesis on something else, I actually did all the research to do like a mesopredator effect on capture probability, because they'll probably come over and eat a raccoon will come over and eat a frog. That's easy pickings. And so just like seeing how many mesopredators visited and then revisited like a permanent installation because they're always eating stuff out of it.
Yeah.
I had cameras.
We had bears too.
Yeah, because they get smart, right? And so you're like messing up the detection probability of whatever. And you're like, we've just made a treat buffet.
Yes, exactly.
Salamanders, a shrew, some beetles. It'll be good eating. So that was what I did. Like my initial, like, I don't know, research that I want to do, but we didn't have enough money to do that. So I did something else, but
that's awesome. I love that stuff. That's
right. Cause I love playing with drift fence, and I'm like, this is not, I mean, every like collection method has its flaws, but I'm like, I would eat the shit out of this shrew right now if I was a possum. Why not? Why not? And it's funny because they do. You can definitely catch them on trail cams coming up and checking it because they need to walk around it too, and you force them to walk around it, and they end up in a bucket with a bunch of shrew snacks. So like, it's fine.
Yeah, we had certain fences that we had problems with. The same raccoons definitely were visiting, and it became like a raccoon buffet. But then another fence that a bear was always visiting, and the good thing, the bear, like the raccoons would tear our traps apart. Like we use these screen funnel traps in addition to bucket traps, and the raccoons would just tear everything apart to get to whatever's in the trap. But the bear just seemed to like to play with the traps, so it would pull the traps away and smash the water bowls inside the traps. But it would just smash these screen traps flat, and it didn't really wreck them. So that was nice that, you know, all we had to do was kind of reset it up. We didn't have to at least rebuild everything with the bear. But the funny thing was that fence that the bear kept visiting, which we nicknamed Booger Bear, when we first dropped off the drift fence there, before we installed it, we went to all our sites and we dropped off a silt fence. And when we came back, the fence was gone. And we couldn't figure out what had happened. So some of our team went to go get another silt fence to bring to that site, and I wandered off into this little cypress dome swamp near our trap site, and I found the fence off in the woods, and it had in the wood, in the little slivers of wood, it was all scratched up, and it had bear hair in the slivers of wood. So you could tell that the bear had actually been playing with the fence and had carried it off. And then when we set the fence up, maybe not the same bear, but maybe multiple bears, but it was definitely the fence that was visited by bears frequently.
What about skunk apes? Was it a skunk ape?
I don't think so. We did have somebody request a permit when I worked in the National Forest there to do skunk ape research, but I don't believe they had detected any.
But they got the permit?
I don't know if they issued them the permit or not. I remember there was some,
just to be nice.
There was some controversy in the National Forest office, like, well, we can't just have anybody out there doing anything. And I was just thinking, why? Who cares? Like, so they're going to photograph some bears and prove there aren't skunk apes. I don't know. Right. I don't know what the danger is here, but sometimes you get bureaucrats that just their initial response to everything. I mean,
some people might like reverse psychology it and be like, because you issued a permit, you must believe it is real. Therefore, you're like, I don't know, unintentionally like making people do it more because you're incentivizing them. But I think, honestly, they're just hanging out in the woods, having fun. But it's fine.
Well,
they're like, what's that noise?
I'm fine with permitting people to study imaginary things as long as we're not not funding it with tax dollars or something.
Yeah, don't fund it, but like they're just like, you have permission to be there after dark, and just clean up your trash. You know, what are they gonna do? They'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
What did we miss? Did we miss anything important?
I'm sure we did. But I guess we'll just have to do it again. Mm-hmm. And but I want to remind everybody, if you're a reptile keeper in the United States, you should be a part of USARK. If you're in Florida, or even if you're not in Florida, we welcome you to join USARK Florida, and we're constantly working with government, working against government, whatever it takes, but we're active in trying to protect your freedoms as reptile keepers, and also working on behalf of conservation. We're doing some conservation projects now in Florida with diamondback terrapins and box turtles and indigo snakes that I'm really excited about. So that's always something that I wanted USARK Florida to be part of, and we're doing some of that also. So it's definitely something, if you're a reptile person, you need to be part of USARK and USARK Florida.
Okay, very good. And they can find that at usarkflorida.org, right?
Yes. Yes. I think it's usarkfl.net or .org takes you there.
That's hard. .org? Nope.
Or if you just Google USARK Florida,
yeah,
you'll find
we're
it.
Adults now. We can figure it out.
Yeah, but membership is free. But of course, if you would do a paid membership or a donation, we would greatly appreciate it. We're working on behalf of reptile keepers all the time. That's my full-time job, and we have volunteers and a whole board that are doing it too. So,
all right. Well, come back before 2 years. I'm pretty sure it's been 2 years. I just lose track of what's going on. There's so much stuff going on. But that was just fun. You'll have to give us your secret pine snake.
Well, and one of these times I'll try to come on with no technical difficulty. So maybe that's a goal.
Mackerel. I still want to make it to Daytona. We'll see if it happens. But that's my dream this year before it's not there anymore, hypothetically.
Well, yeah, come. We'll be happy to see you, hang out, show you around, whatever you want to do. Go herping.
Look for the swamp ape.
Look for the swamp ape. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Say bye.
Thanks, Jessica.
Go to USARK something. Please. Bye-bye. You got to keep...